Steve Harvey SDOPS Family Feud. After girl reveals her last wish, there are moments on television that remind you why you are alive. Moments so real and so raw that they cut right through the noise of the world and grab you by the heart. What happened on Family Feud in September 2024 was one of those moments. A 12-year-old girl stood on that stage, looked Steve Harvey in the eye, and told him her last wish. Not her wish for Christmas, not her wish for her birthday. Her last wish, the wish she wanted fulfilled before time ran out. Steve Harvey, the man who had spent his entire career making people laugh, stopped the show. He did not pause it. He did not take a break. He stopped it completely. And what he did for that little girl over the next 20 minutes would prove that sometimes television is not just entertainment. Sometimes it is a miracle disguised as a game show. Before we go any further, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel right now. This is a story you are going to want to share with everyone you know, so stay until the very end. The Dawson family from Savannah, Georgia did not look like a family in crisis when they walked onto the Family Feud stage. They were smiling. They were holding hands. They were wearing matching yellow shirts, bright and warm like sunshine, and if you saw them from the audience, you would have thought they were one of the happiest families in America. That was exactly what they wanted you to think. Because the Dawson family had made a pact before they arrived at the studio. No sadness, no tears, not until the cameras stopped rolling. Today was supposed to be a good day. Today was supposed to be her day. Standing at the center of the family was a girl named Amara Dawson. She was 12 years old. She had deep brown skin, a gap-toothed smile that could light up an entire room, and a yellow head wrap tied around her head in a neat, elegant knot that her mother had spent 20 minutes perfecting that morning. Amara was small, even for 12. She had lost weight over the past year, and her yellow Family Feud shirt hung a little loose on her shoulders. But her eyes were enormous and full of a brightness that had nothing to do with the studio lights. Amara Dawson was the kind of child who walked into a space and made it warmer simply by being there. Her teachers said it. Her doctors said it. Her family knew it better than anyone. Amara had been diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor 11 months earlier. The doctors at the Children's Hospital in Savannah had found it during a routine scan after Amara had started having headaches and dizzy spells during soccer practice. The tumor was located in a part of the brain that made surgery impossible. Chemotherapy had slowed its growth but could not stop it. Radiation had bought time but not enough. The doctors had been honest with the family, the way good doctors are honest even when the truth is unbearable. They told Amara's parents, Michael and Sherri's Dawson, that their daughter had between 6 months and a year. That conversation had taken place 9 months ago. Michael Dawson was 41 years old. He was a high school basketball coach in Savannah who had spent the last 20 years shaping young men into athletes and, more importantly, into decent human beings. Michael was 6'4" and built like the power forward he had been in college, but when it came to his daughter, he was the gentlest man you had ever seen. He braided her hair when Sherri's was at work. He drove her to every chemotherapy appointment and sat in the waiting room reading her favorite books out loud so she could hear his voice through the door. He had not missed a single treatment. Not one. Sherri's Dawson was 39. She was a pediatric nurse at the same hospital where Amara was being treated, which meant she understood the medical reality of her daughter's condition with a clarity that was both a blessing and a curse. She knew what the numbers meant. She knew what the scans showed. She knew what was coming. And yet every morning Sherri's woke up, put on her scrubs, went to work, and took care of other people's children with the same tenderness and attention she gave her own, because that was who she was. She had once told her sister that if she stopped moving, if she sat still for too long, the grief would catch up to her and she would not be able to get back up. So she kept moving. The fourth member of the team was Amara's older brother, Elijah, who was 16. Elijah was a junior at the same high school where Michael coached, and he played point guard on his father's basketball team. Elijah was tall and quiet and carried himself with a maturity that no 16-year-old should have to possess. He had become Amara's protector over the past year in a way that went beyond normal sibling closeness. He walked her to school every morning, even though it made him late for his own first period. He sat with her during treatments, showing her funny videos on his phone to distract her from the needles. And on the nights when Amara could not sleep because the headaches were too bad, Elijah would sit on the floor next to her bed and read to her until she drifted off. He never complained. He never asked why this was happening. He just showed up, the same way his father showed up, because that was what the men in the Dawson family did. The fifth member of the team was Amara's grandmother, Dorothy, who was 67 and had been retired from the Chatham County school system for 2 years. Dorothy was the matriarch, the prayer warrior, The woman who had raised 5 children on a teacher's salary and put every single one of them through college through sheer force of will and an unshakable belief that God had a plan, even when that plan made no earthly sense. Dorothy had been the one holding the family together since Amara's diagnosis. She cooked the meals. She organized the prayer chains. She sat with Sherry's on the nights when Sherry's finally stopped moving long enough for the grief to find her. And she had been the one who 3 weeks earlier had sat down with Amara and asked her a question that nobody else in the family had been brave enough to ask. "Baby girl, if you could do one thing, anything in the whole world, what would it be?" Amara's answer had surprised everyone. She did not say Disneyland. She did not say meet a celebrity. She did not say swim with dolphins or fly in a helicopter or any of the things that most children her age would have said. Amara looked at her grandmother and said, "I want to be on Family Feud. I want to play the game with my family on TV so that when I am gone, they can watch it and remember that we had one perfect day together." Dorothy had called the show the next morning. She explained the situation to the producers, and within 48 hours, the Dawson family had been scheduled for a taping. The producers had informed Steve Harvey's team about Amara's condition, but they had specifically requested that Steve not be told the details beforehand. The family wanted to play the game normally. They wanted to have fun. They did not want pity. They wanted one perfect day. The Dawsons were facing off against the Palmer family from Charlotte, North Carolina. The Palmers were a lovely family, warm and competitive and ready to play. Both families shook hands before the cameras started rolling. Lisa Palmer, the other team's captain, looked at Amara and said, "I love your head wrap, sweetheart, you look beautiful." Amara grinned her gap-toothed grin and said, "Thank you. My mama tied it for me. She is the best at everything." Sherry's pressed her lips together and looked at the ceiling for a moment, blinking fast before composing herself and putting her arm around her daughter. The pact was holding. No tears, not yet. Steve Harvey walked out and worked the room with his usual charisma. When he reached the Dawson family, he bent down to greet Amara. "And who is this young lady?" he asked, his voice big and theatrical. Amara stood up as straight as she could and said, "My name is Amara Dawson. I am 12 years old." "Today is the best day of my life," Steve grinned. "The best day of your life, girl, we have not even started playing yet." Amara grinned right back. "I know, but I am already here, and my whole family is here, and you are here, so it is already the best day." Steve laughed and shook his head. "Well, Amara Dawson, let us make it even better." He had no idea. He had absolutely no idea what this child was carrying, what this family was going through, or what was about to happen on his stage. The game started and something magical happened. Amara was incredible. She was fast, she was funny, and she was fearless. In the first round, the question was, name something you would find at a birthday party. Amara slammed her hand on the buzzer before the Palmer family's contestant had even moved and shouted, "Cake!" Number one answer. She turned to her family with her arms raised, and the audience went wild. Michael lifted her off the ground in a bear hug, and for a moment the Dawson family looked exactly like what they wanted to look like. A happy family having the time of their lives. The second round was just as good. Dorothy gave a number one answer that made Steve Harvey shake her hand in admiration. Elijah surprised everyone with a clever response that earned a round of applause. Sherry's contributed a strong answer that kept the family's momentum going. The Dawsons were playing like they had been preparing for this their entire lives, and in a way, they had. Amara had spent the past 3 weeks studying Family Feud from her bed, watching old episodes on her tablet during treatments, memorizing the kinds of answers that scored highest. She had made her family practice every night after dinner, turning their living room into a makeshift game show set with Elijah reading questions from his phone and Dorothy keeping score on a notepad. Amara had prepared for this the same way she had approached her illness, with determination, focus, and an absolute refusal to waste a single moment. By the fourth round, the Dawsons had built a commanding lead. The audience was firmly in their corner. Steve was clearly enjoying the family, especially Amara, who had a natural comedic timing that caught him off guard more than once. During one exchange, Steve asked her a question about school, and Amara responded with a deadpan one-liner that made Steve stagger backward in mock disbelief. "This 12-year-old is funnier than me," he said to the audience. "I am being outperformed on my own show by a child in a yellow head wrap." The audience roared. Amara curtsied. Then came the round that changed everything. Steve read the question. "We surveyed 100 people. Name something you wish you had more of." It was a wide-open question. Time, money, sleep, friends, patience. Any of those would have been perfectly good answers. It was Amara's turn. She stepped up to the podium, and for the first time all game, her energy shifted. The playful spark in her eyes softened into something quieter and more serious. She looked at Steve, and instead of buzzing in with a quick answer the way she had been doing all day, she paused. Steve noticed the change immediately. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked. Amara nodded. Then she looked over at her family. Michael, Sherise, Elijah, Dorothy, they were all watching her, and you could see on their faces the beginning of something cracking. The pact was bending. The wall they had all agreed to keep up was starting to show fractures. Amara turned back to Steve and said in a voice that was steady but small, "Mr. Harvey, can I tell you something before I answer?" Steve's smile faded slightly, replaced by something gentler. "Of course you can, baby. You can tell me anything." Amara took a breath. "I have a brain tumor. The doctors said I do not have a lot of time left. Maybe a few months, maybe less. I do not really understand all of it, but I know what it means." She paused and looked down at the podium for a second, collecting herself. The studio had gone absolutely still. Every person in that audience was frozen. Steve Harvey's face was changing in real time, the professional warmth draining away and being replaced by something raw and unguarded. "I asked my grandma if I could come on this show," Amara continued, "because I wanted my family to have a video of us being happy together. I wanted them to have something they could watch after I am gone and remember that we had one really, really good day. That is why I have been trying so hard today, Mr. Harvey, not to win money. I want them to have this." She looked at Steve, and her eyes were clear and dry. She was not crying. She was not looking for sympathy. She was 12 years old, standing on a stage, speaking about her own death with a composure that most adults could not have managed. And then she answered the question. "Something I wish I had more of," Amara said into the microphone. "Time with my family." The board lit up. Number one answer, 42 points, but nobody clapped, nobody made a sound. The studio was silent in a way that studios are not supposed to be silent, the kind of silence that physically hurts. Behind her, the pact shattered. Michael turned away from the cameras, his massive shoulders shaking. Sherise covered her face with both hands and let out a sound that was halfway between a sob and a gasp. Elijah was staring at his shoes, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles in his neck were visible. Dorothy had her hand on her chest and was whispering something, a prayer probably, her lips moving without sound. Steve Harvey stood behind his podium and he did not move. His card was in his hand. His mouth was slightly open. His eyes were locked on Amara, and every single person watching could see the moment when the professional host was overwhelmed by the human being underneath. Tears began sliding down Steve's face. He did not wipe them. He did not look away. He let them fall. Then he put his card down on the podium, stepped around it, and walked toward the production booth. "Stop the show," he said. His voice was quiet but carried across the studio in the silence. "Stop the show right now." The clock went dark. The board went dark. The game was over. And what happened next was something that nobody in that studio, from the producers in the booth to the cameramen on the floor to the families on the stage, would ever forget. Steve Harvey walked straight to Amara. He did not stop at the podium. He did not address the audience. He walked directly to this 12-year-old girl, and he kneeled down in front of her so they were face to face. He took both of her hands in his, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but the microphone caught every word. "Amara, I need you to listen to me. Can you do that?" Amara nodded. She was watching Steve with those enormous brown eyes, and there was no fear in them. There was curiosity and warmth and the steady gaze of a child who had already faced the worst thing a person can face and had decided that she was going to meet it standing up. "You said you came here so your family would have a video of a perfect day," Steve said, "and I want you to know that you have already given them that. You have given them more than that. You walked onto this stage and you played this game better than people 3 times your age. You made this entire audience laugh and cheer and fall in love with you. And you just stood at that podium and said the bravest, most beautiful thing I have ever heard on this show in my entire life." Steve's voice cracked and he paused to steady himself. "But I am not going to let this just be a video, Amara. I am not going to let this be something your family watches on a screen. I am going to make sure that today is everything you wanted it to be and more, because you deserve that. Your family deserves that. And because sometimes God puts people on a stage for a reason, and I believe with everything in me that you were put on this stage today for a reason." Steve stood up and faced the audience. Tears were pouring down his face, and he made no effort to stop them. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet Amara Dawson. She is 12 years old. She has a brain tumor. And instead of asking for toys or trips or anything for herself, she asked to come on Family Feud so her family would have a memory of one perfect day. I have been doing television for over 30 years, and I have never met anyone, child or adult, who taught me more about love and courage in a single moment than this little girl just did." The audience was on its feet, crying and applauding at the same time. The Palmer family was sobbing on their side of the stage. Lisa Palmer had her arms wrapped around her daughter, holding her tight, the way every parent in that studio was wishing they could hold their children. Steve turned to the production team. "The Dawson family wins the game. They get the $20,000, and I want to do something else." He looked at Amara. Amara, you said you wanted your family to have one perfect day. I'm going to do everything in my power to give you more than one. Steve announced that his foundation would be covering a family vacation for the Dawsons, anywhere they wanted to go, fully paid, with medical support arranged so Amara could travel safely. He announced that the show would produce a special highlight reel of Amara's best moments from the taping, professionally edited with music and graphics, something her family could keep forever. And he announced that Family Feud would donate $50,000 to the Children's Hospital in Savannah where Amara was being treated in Amara's name. Amara stood there and listened to all of it. She did not cry. She did not jump up and down. She turned to her mother and said, "Mama, did you hear that? They are going to help the other kids at the hospital." That was what registered for her, not the vacation, not the highlight reel, the fact that other children were going to be helped. Sherai's finally lost it completely. She dropped to her knees, pulled Amara into her arms, and held her daughter in front of 200 people with the fierce, desperate love of a mother who knew she was running out of time. Michael wrapped himself around both of them. Elijah did the same. Dorothy stood behind them all, her hands on her grandson's shoulders, her eyes closed, her lips still moving in prayer. The Dawson family held each other on that stage in a circle so tight that you could not tell where one person ended and another began. And Steve Harvey stood a few feet away, watching them, crying freely, and looking like a man who had just been reminded of something he needed to be reminded of. Steve turned to the cameras one final time. "I want every person watching this to understand something. This little girl is 12 years old and she already understands something that most of us spend our whole lives trying to learn. The most valuable thing in the world is not money. It is not fame. It is not winning a game show. It is time with the people who love you. That is the only thing that matters." And Amara Dawson knew that at 12 years old. If she can teach us that lesson, then her time here, however long it is, will have mattered more than most people's entire lives. The audience gave a standing ovation that lasted over 3 minutes. Steve did not try to wrap it up or move on. He let it go on because some moments deserve all the time in the world. When the episode aired 7 weeks later, it broke the internet. That is a phrase people use casually, but in this case, it was literally true. The clip of Amara saying, "Time with my family," was viewed over 100 million times in the first 10 days. It was the most watched Family Feud clip in the history of the show. It was shared on every social media platform, covered by every major news outlet, and discussed on talk shows and radio programs across the world. It was translated and subtitled in over 30 languages. A clip from a daytime game show became, for a brief and extraordinary period, the thing that the entire world was watching and crying over together. But the numbers were just numbers. What mattered was what the story did to the people who heard it. Parents across the country reported turning off their phones and spending entire evenings with their children after watching the clip. Teachers played it in their classrooms and led conversations about gratitude, family, and the meaning of time. Churches used it in sermons. Therapists used it in sessions with families who were struggling to connect. A hospice worker in Minnesota wrote a letter to the show saying that she played the clip for families who were navigating end-of-life conversations, and that Amara's words had helped more people find peace than anything she had encountered in 20 years of work. The Dawson family took their vacation. They went to the coast of South Carolina, to a rental house on the beach that was big enough for the entire family. Steve Harvey's team had arranged for a private nurse to travel with them, so Amara could be medically supported without the trip feeling clinical. For 5 days, the Dawson family lived at the beach. They built sandcastles. They watched sunsets. Michael carried Amara into the ocean on his shoulders because the waves were too strong for her to stand in on her own. Elijah taught her how to skip stones, and Amara managed to get one to skip 3 times, which she declared a world record. Dorothy cooked every meal from scratch in the beach house kitchen, filling the rooms with the smells of the food Amara loved most. And Sherai's, for the first time in almost a year, stopped moving. She sat on the beach next to her daughter and watched the waves, and she did not think about scans or medications or timelines. She just sat there and held Amara's hand and breathed. Amara recorded a video message during the beach trip that Sherai's later shared online. In the video, Amara is sitting on the porch of the beach house with the sunset behind her, and she says, "Hi, everybody. My name is Amara. I was on Family Feud and I met Mr. Steve Harvey, and he was really funny and really nice. I want to say thank you to everybody who watched and everybody who sent me messages. My mama reads them to me every night before bed. I want you to know that I am having the best week of my life. My whole family is here and we are at the beach and my grandma made peach cobbler. If you are watching this and you are sad about something, I want you to go find your family and give them a hug. That is the best medicine there is. I know because I have tried a lot of medicine and hugs are still the best one. She finishes the video with her gap-toothed smile and a little wave. The video was viewed over 40 million times. Steve Harvey featured the Dawson family on his talk show 2 months after the episode aired. Amara was there, sitting in the guest chair with her yellow head wrap and her gap-toothed grin, looking smaller than she had on the Family Feud stage, but no less radiant. Steve held her hand through most of the interview, and the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted so long the producers had to gently signal for it to end so they could continue taping. Steve asked Amara what she remembered most about her time on Family Feud. She thought about it and said, "I remember that you cried, Mr. Harvey. You cried a lot." The audience laughed through their tears. Steve laughed too, wiping his eyes. "You are right. I did cry a lot. You made me cry, little girl." Amara grinned. "I did not mean to make you cry. I just told the truth." Steve nodded. "That is exactly right. You told the truth." And the truth made everybody in that building feel something they needed to feel. That is a gift, Amara. Not everybody has that gift. The highlight reel that Family Feud produced for the Dawson family became the family's most treasured possession. It was 12 minutes long, professionally edited with music and titles, capturing every moment of Amara's time on the show. Her best answers, her one-liners that made Steve stagger backward, her curtsy after he said she was funnier than him. The moment she said, "Time with my family," the family hug on the stage, and at the very end, a montage of photos and clips from the beach vacation, set to a song that Amara had chosen herself. The family watched it together every Sunday evening for as long as they could. The $50,000 donation to the Children's Hospital in Savannah, made in Amara's name, was used to create a family comfort room on the oncology floor. The room was designed to give families a private, peaceful space to spend time together during long hospital stays. It had comfortable furniture, soft lighting, books, games, and a television. A small plaque by the door read, "The Amara Dawson Family Room, because time with your family is the best medicine." Cherise had helped design the room, drawing on her experience as a pediatric nurse to create a space that felt like home rather than a hospital. When the room was dedicated, Amara was there, sitting in a wheelchair with a blanket on her lap, and she said, "Now other kids and their families have a place to just be together. That is all I wanted." The ripple effects of Amara's story extended far beyond the hospital. Make-A-Wish and similar organizations reported a significant increase in children requesting family-centered experiences rather than individual wishes after Amara's episode aired. The trend was so notable that child psychologists began studying it, calling it the Amara effect, the phenomenon of seriously ill children prioritizing shared family time over personal gifts or adventures. Researchers found that children who chose family-centered wishes reported higher levels of emotional well-being, and that their families experienced less complicated grief after their passing. Amara, without knowing it, had shifted the way an entire field thought about what dying children needed most. 6 months after the Family Feud taping, on a quiet Saturday morning in March, Amara Dawson passed away at home in Savannah, surrounded by her family. She was 12 years old. Michael was holding her right hand. Cherise was holding her left. Elijah was sitting on the floor beside her bed, just as he had done on so many nights before. And Dorothy was in the chair by the window, her eyes closed, her lips moving silently. The Family Feud highlight reel was playing softly on the television in the corner of the room. On the screen, Amara was grinning her gap-toothed grin and slamming her hand on the buzzer, and the audience was cheering, and Steve Harvey was shaking his head in delighted disbelief. The sound of laughter and applause filled the room, and the family later said it was exactly what Amara would have wanted. Her last day surrounded by the sounds of her best day. Steve Harvey posted a message on his social media the evening Amara passed. It read, "Today the world lost Amara Dawson. She was 12 years old and she was the bravest person I have ever met. She came on my show and asked for one thing, time with her family. She got that time, and in the process she taught millions of people, including me, what actually matters in this life. I will carry her with me for the rest of mine. Rest in peace, little girl. You won the only game that counts." The Dawson family, in the months and years that followed, honored Amara's memory in the way she would have wanted, by helping others. Michael started a program at his high school called Perfect Day, where students were given opportunities to plan special days with their families, funded by community donations. Cherise continued working at the Children's Hospital, now splitting her time between nursing and running the Amara Dawson Family Room, which served hundreds of families in its first year. Elijah received a basketball scholarship to play in college, and before every game he touched the yellow wristband on his left arm, the one Amara had given him at the beach, and whispered, "This one is for you." And Dorothy, every Sunday evening without fail, gathered the family together, pressed play on the highlight reel, and watched her granddaughter light up the screen one more time. Years later, when people asked the Dawson family about that day on Family Feud, they all said the same thing. Amara got what she wished for. She wanted her family to have a video of one perfect day. She wanted something they could watch and remember that they were happy, and she gave them exactly that. But she also gave them something she had not planned on. She gave them a purpose. Every act of kindness they performed in her name, every family they helped through the hospital room, every student who experienced a perfect day. Because of Michael's program, all of it traced back to a 12-year-old girl who stood on a game show stage and said the truest thing anyone had ever said. She wished for more time with her family. And in doing so, she gave every family who heard her story the one thing they needed most, a reason to put down their phones, turn off their screens, and hold the people they love while they still can. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. Leave a comment below and tell us what Amara's story means to you. Share this video with your family today because Amara was right. Time together is the best medicine there is. We will see you in the next one.